Well, hello everybody. Here we are in the Red Monk Austin office, well air conditioned.
Well air conditioned.
And I've got a guest who happened to be in town here, so I thought I'd sit him down and give him a little "How's it going?" quiz. And why don't you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, my name is Damon Edwards. I'm one of the co-founders of DTO Solutions, and I might know me from a lot of work that I do in the DevOps community and blogging and DevOps conference organizing and some open source projects we work on and stuff like that.
So, I told you some things I was going to ask you beforehand, but it occurred to me.
Yeah.
I see that you have like a Timbuktu rolling luggage thing there.
Yeah.
And so how is it?
It is amazing. I highly recommend it. Unpaid endorsement here. Anything from those guys make works awesome. It's comfortable. It's rugged. It's got the little spine down the back, not inside the bag, so you can put more shoes in your rolling bag. I got big shoes. Don't fit so well. Fits perfectly in the overhead. It's amazing. A+, almost as cool as your camera setup.
We'll have to figure out how to. I'll get in front of a mirror and record that with the camera setup.
Yes.
I think that would be appropriate. So, luggage reviewing aside, which while that is perhaps the most important topic we're going to talk about today, we'll move on to the other stuff. And so, what exactly is it that DTO Solutions does? Can you kind of give us a little?
Yeah, I mean the shortest answer is we're consultants, right? That's what we do. So we put together solutions for mostly. Our domain of expertise is companies who build and operate revenue-producing software-based services, right? So it's financial services, e-commerce, more and more massive like online gaming, or massive scale. Less of some MMOs, some of the casual gaming. People have to basically big infrastructure, and for them, their business is really getting ideas from inception, right? From where they've got an idea to where it's running and making them money in a customer-facing environment. Well, they hope it's making them money, right? But that's part of this.
That's the goal.
The goal, right? So you need that cycle to be as short as possible, as flexible as possible, so you can turn that crank and take as many shots at the prize, and really make the business more agile. Which is kind of it's a huge. I think we've seen this shift from people who thought of IT as a back of the house operation to now it's their factory floor. It's where they make their money. So
we were in a little summit yesterday that Dell put on, and I helped them figure out some people to invite. So I guess I helped them put it on to some extent. But there was a lot of what you were saying in the group was if I to put it in my own words is like you were using the metaphor to crank, but like this allows you to try out a whole bunch of different stuff quickly. And it really does seem like what it seems like you guys get involved with is like if you want to do a lot of iterative cycles instead of one big long chunk of stuff, then you guys can help them figure out how to do that essentially.
Well, the most fundamental thing is just business agility, right? That's the kind of word, which is like, how quickly can we respond to external forces and internal ideas and capitalize on those. Yeah. And if you're the company that, if you can do that, if you have two competitors and one can do what a turn every month and the other can do a turn every day, that company just has 30 times better probability of hitting the mark, and they can do it quicker, and operations becomes a strategic weapon. So all that kind of lofty, cocktail party talk aside, what we fundamentally do is we come in and help them look at sort of that, the DevOps life cycle, I guess people now call it, but the development to operations life cycle, saying, okay, once stuff is checked in, all the things have to happen to get that out the other end to where it's in a customer-facing environment. How do you make that as efficient and reliable and as smooth as possible? So there's a lot of kind of process architecture work, a lot of getting all the parts figured out, and then there's just a lot of automated infrastructure, helping them implement the tools and the processes to get all of that done. A lot of open source tooling, but we also work with a lot of they have a lot of commercial tools in the mix, and in different organizations. Some are very homogeneous, some are incredibly heterogeneous, and have not only people but not only technologies but people and locations and all those kind of things.
And so you were mentioning, you use a bunch of different technologies, and you guys actually work on some open source projects.
Yeah, we do.
And can you give us an idea of what those are?
It's a variety of things. I think the most interesting one right now is called Rundeck, RUNDECK, rundeck.org. And it's just basically, when we're helping people implement these solutions, we like to use a lot of we call it like the loosely coupled tool chain, which is basically you use the tools that work best for you, and you basically put them together to kind of use the simplest implementation of each tool to achieve your goal. And Rundeck kind of fills this gap we see sort of in the command and control area, or kind of the lightweight orchestration area, which is basically, something goes wrong. So this is kind of easy scenario. Something goes wrong, I want to jump on a keyboard and do something. Well, how do I know where my different machines are? How do I dispatch different commands across those machines? How do I, pull things back, run scripts. So fundamentally, Rundeck plugs into Chef or Puppet or straight to EC3 or EC2. Excuse me, there's no EC3 yet, and or directly into VM or whatever it is that is your system of record. Knows where your hosts are, can read the tags in, or you can tag it in there. You can basically say, all my app servers, run this command, right? Or you can also, it also has kind of a lightweight orchestration in it where you can start to save those commands as jobs and say, now I know if something goes wrong or I need to do something, I've got my kind of bag of tricks I can hit. And the difference is when you're, working like a Puppet or a Chef, that's more for your, these are my sort of, I know these are my procedures. I kind of want to formalize them more. And that's why there's a tight integration between Rundeck and,
right.
And Puppet and Chef, they're very complementary.
So would you say Rundeck is sort of like the to use the Ptolemaic thing, is sort of like the last glass sphere around the universe?
Not necessarily. No.
Like what's higher than it, if you will, in that the IT department uses?
Yeah, right now I don't think anything, because I don't think it's not. I mean, it's not meant to be that. It's meant to fill a very specific kind of need.
Would you have dashboards that generate reports for people to look at?
That's very important, but most people are still building that themselves now.
Okay.
I think that is an area that it's kind of, it depends on what the interface is that you want to work through, right? Do you are you in the oh crap, something happened reactive mode? Are you in the sort of pre-planned big red button kind of change mode? Are you what mode are you in to work in? But Rundeck kind of offers you sort of that more ad hoc command and control.
Right.
And also ties into your LDAP or Active Directory server, so you can hand things off. Hey, Cote, you're a marketing guy. You want to push new content to your site, drop it into this folder, and here's this red button you can log in and hit, and it will do these
there's sort of
for you.
To some extent,
delegation.
There's sort of self-service stuff.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, all systems we build, delegation and self-service is very important.
Right.
Because operations as doers, it just doesn't. It becomes the bottleneck.
Yeah.
So you want to use tools to instrument the right processes and the right capabilities, and then you need to have kind of like safe delegation, guardrails, if is a good way to put it. And you want to hand control off to developers, to
right.
To QA folks if you have that model in your organization, to project managers. Let them do their things and then use the self-service.
Right. I always think of it as steel-toed boots, so people don't shoot themselves in the foot. If you're going to give them guns,
that's a good way
deploying software.
That's a good
or
way
maybe just steel boots.
Just steel boots in general. Yeah. They still miss their toe and shoot the rest of their foot off.
And so I mean, like you said, you guys are fundamentally consultants,
mm-hmm.
right? And so is
real quick before you go there, Rundeck it's Apache licensed. It's fully open source. We encourage it. It's rundeck.org. Just it's a project we do. We want people to get involved with. And
exactly. And so that's, I mean, there's not like a productized version or anything.
No.
It's just
I mean, we're firm believers
in
that when it comes to automation tools, that it needs to be open source. It needs to be a skill that people can learn, and it's easily transferable, and they can mold it to their processes. That's kind of a fundamental belief that we have.
Right.
We're not open source zealots by any stretch of the imagination, but for automation tools, we're big believers in open source tools, just because of the flexibility that you need. This is people's livelihood.
And then how does that relate to control tier, which is something that you guys do well?
Yes. Well, control tier was a much older thing we did. Control tier started, it just kind of got old. It's long in the tooth, right? It started long before all these other tools were available. So you had to put everything in the control tier box. So the project itself got kind of bloated. It's open source, fully open source project as well. So it's kind of got to be a big project. It's a lot of different things. It's kind of, if you're going to build this highly modeled, automation for managing complex application infrastructure. So it was quite successful in a number of large banks and places where they need to have things extremely modeled, locked down. They had a strong separation between sort of the application tier and the kind of underlying system tier. They wanted to sort of work in kind of very logical models, these kind of complex legacy systems. They want to do a lot of dependency-driven automation, so kind of dependency-driven orchestration. So control tier is fantastic at solving those problems, but the learning curve is very steep. So, for most folks, they're kind of selling on more of a loosely coupled, lighter weight way of working.
Yeah.
More of a two-dimensional, less of the kind of logical, three-dimensional model.
You're playing normal chess, not Vulcan chess.
Exactly. So when you need, most people, that's what they're living at. So Rundeck actually took the most popular part of Control Tier, which was sort of it was called Job Center, but it's kind of that front end, the command dispatcher, the web interface, the security. There's a lot of security. It's basically the simple stuff that people wanted up front without having to get into the modules and the model and all those things.
Okay.
And to complete that same footprint, you can use, Chef or Puppet. You can use, like Chef and Puppet, Yum and RPM, and basically pulling information from, like, example, you don't need, if you want to know where your packages are, Rundeck can query Hudson or Jenkins and pull back what are the last 5 packages that were, that were built, and display those in a drop down for you. So Rundeck kind of relies on getting information from the sources of truth, rather than Control Tier's model, which was this is the source of truth.
Yeah. It sounds like Control Tier is more of a here's a bucket for you to fill, and whereas Rundeck is sort of like we help you make a bucket and then get the bucket filled. Or something along those lines. Like
I think so.
Like you said, Control Tier had more of a defined container or model or package.
Yeah. I mean, underneath
that
the
was moving along, whereas
underneath the covers, it's amazing. I mean, it's got a full web-based RDF. I mean, ontology manager. It's crazy. But on top of it, there was this
RDF. Fantastic.
On top of it, there was this type object model that said, hey, you've got there's nodes and there's nodes and there's services that deploy to nodes and there's packages that you associate with a service, and you could have package types, and you have constraints on what kind of types go with which package, and those services can be tied together and do sites, and you can have these crazy things like change dependencies. It looks at the model and knows how to do this auto magic rolling updates across the model. And
next thing, you've got a big UML poster, right?
If you want to print it out, we don't like those. But yeah, I mean, it's so for certain situations, that's especially in the legacy sort of application world, but we can show people how to do all those same tricks without having to kind of dig into the fully modeled way.
Right.
So that's kind of things I want to tell people is that this is all a logical continuation of the same ideas. It's just newer technologies, a newer approach, more in line with the cloudy, loosely coupled, distributed world that people are going to deal with today, and letting people work in the individual tools that they want, and then using the toolchain model to tie it all together.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then getting back to the DevOps thing, so you guys, together with Andrew Schaefer, you guys wrote this white paper back in 2009? If I remember,
it was kind of a while ago. It still gets
fully automated provisioning
we've got WebOps 2.0, fully automated provisioning.
And I still point people towards that as sort of like here's an actual I'm one of the hand wavy guys. There's lots of people like, oh, DevOps is fantastic, but here's something that's sort of you could download it. I mean,
we need to update that. Yeah, we need to update it because it's getting a little
longer. Why don't you tell people what was in that paper first of all?
Sure, it was basically based on some real kind of case studies. We sort of came up with that. If you want to do fully automated provisioning, so this is the early tool chain. There was kind of 3 levels that you had to look at. One of them is the kind of bootstrapping or provisioning phase.
Yeah.
The names kind of change a lot, but there's sort of bootstrapping or provisioning phase, which is if you're in the the data center worlds, or Kickstarter, or Cobbler, now Crowbar or whatever, right? Or if you're in the cloud, it's whatever tool it is that spins up your kind of AMI, right? And then you've got sort of the system configuration level, which is like, okay, I've got an AMI. Now I need to do my magic to use a configuration management tool to turn that into a type of web server, right? And then I did the same thing over here in this type, app server, right? And then database and so on and so forth. And then I'm going to have sort of the third layer, which you could call sort of the orchestration layer, right? Which basically comes along and says, okay, now I'm going to take the app server, the 2 web servers, and the database, and I am going to tie them together, which they might already be by the configuration, and say this is my business service, and I'm going to orchestrate this. Start the database first, make sure it's healthy, start up the app server, start the web servers, ping the load balancer, and say that it's all ready. So if you cover all 3 of those areas, and there's kind of tools listed they can do either one from, or either of those 3 from, then you've got fully automated provisioning. And there's some fun stuff too, like the fully automated provisioning tests and what it means to be fully automated provisioning. And then we finish it off with an example. Basically, here's it's actually based on a real some real big retailer.
Yeah. No, I mean, even though it's a few years old, which is
all the principles are still the same.
Ancient, by
it is.
But it's still it's still a good paper to kind of get an idea of what exactly people are talking about when they talk about cloud and DevOps, or that even more abstract, the kind of rapid iterative application development stuff and delivery.
well, I think what it basically says is it's really about the idea of it's how do you automate the provisioning side of it?
Yeah.
Which is a major, people talk a lot about, the DevOps is like, oh, it's all about deployment. And it's a good place to start because it is the bulk of sort of your activity, really. And not only that, it's the bulk of your problems too. Stuff only breaks when you change it, right?
Yeah.
So, or usually breaks when you change it. So if you solve that problem, you're kind of getting a long ways there. But DevOps, I think, took a lot of these ideas, and part of it was the fully automated provisioning ideas. Also looking at, now we've got this cloudy infrastructure, and then we've got the ideas of Agile, like, wow, so what do you get when you put all this together? And DevOps is about the idea of taking these different techniques and saying, how do we fundamentally change our organization to move quicker?
Yeah.
Right? So, provisioning is one part of it, but DevOps, we say DevOps is people, then process, then tools, right? So first you got to look at your organization and say, do I have the right kind of alignment? Have I set the right metrics that I'm measuring that get everybody aligned on the common incentives? Do I have it where I don't have these big silos where I've got a VP of Dev that's, goes straight down 100 levels, and I got a VP of Ops straight down 100 levels.
Yeah.
And the only time anybody looks at the end-to-end process is the CIO, who doesn't know any idea what's going on levels, 97 through 100. So that's kind of the organizational side. Then there's the process side, which is, okay, do I have the right, look at something like continuous delivery, right? Do I have the right process model in place that I'm going to use to get people moving in the right direction? And then once I've got the people doing the right, or aligned the right way, and the processes in place, third piece is tools, and that's just an engineering, put the hammer to the nails and put the right tools in place to reinforce the processes, and reinforce the people doing the right thing. So that's all DevOps is. It's a umbrella of problem statements, and then different people's opinions on and ideas and best practices. Really experiences. It's experience-based movement.
Yeah,
on how to solve problems.
One of the things that I was realizing, because it was made pretty explicit at this summit thing we were at yesterday, or whatever you want to call it, afternoon of fun.
Lovely.
Was it's been implicit, and it's implicit in a lot of the things you're saying. But it was Eric Huddlesteen, right? Or is it Huddleston? I probably got. Anyways, the CTO of the Datchus Group,
right?
And he had a pretty detailed diagram of how they do DevOps or whatever.
Yeah, that's a continuous. Definitely continuous delivery.
Right.
Probably would say continuous deployment type.
Right.
Type
but the he had sufficient books up there that would claim other titles to give titles for. But anyways, it was making me think that. Maybe you can add some color to this, but I feel like until recently, DevOps was pretty much a technical concern. Like there was this. There's been this debate about it's tools, no, it's culture. It's tools, no, it's culture. But it was making me realize that there has been this. Maturity is the wrong word, but there's this stage of DevOps, which is you can't really call it this because it means something else, but it's kind of like biz DevOps. And you were just going over exactly like there's this sort of alignment of like, why are we doing all this in the first place?
Well, we all kind of came at it from the same angle, right? So it's just there's different ways. So the DevOps movement kind of if you look at the history of it, it was originally about, hey, how come development operations don't get along? Our jobs suck. Why can't we just do stuff better, right? And then we realized that by DevOps doing stuff better, that these businesses now, that is their factory floor. It's where they make their money. So when they do stuff better, the business runs better. And so I sort of backed into, first it was just how come developers and operations don't get along. Then it's, well, how do we kind of have this more, start with agile infrastructure? How do we just get more agile and make it so agile just flows all the way through the organization? Because Patrick Dubois had this situation where, hey, it's kind of fun when I was over on the development side, and then tomorrow I got to go back to the operations guys, and it's all chaos. Then I go back to the development side, and it's like, elevator music's playing, it's all, jazzy and groovy, and this side, it's just klaxons are going off, and it's chaos, and they're like, he's like, something's going on here. How do we get these worlds sort of smoothed out and learn from each other? And so it started kind of with those intentions, and then I think from that we sort of realized, wow, if you do this stuff right, you're actually improving the business, and then you get a lot of the sort of 4 steps, the epiphany lean startup folks that said, yeah, we do this because it's a continuation of our thinking of the business, and we're like, you're right. We're both arriving at the same point, and it's the same ideas.
I think that's exactly it is. Like I think it was kind of unintentional, but the lean startup people and the DevOps people do, as you were just saying, they do seem to have kind of coincidentally come at the same fork in the road from 2 separate roads. that metaphor doesn't work. But
yeah,
but
it's kind of what it is. Yeah, I mean, the fundamental ideas are very similar.
It's kind of like, it seems like Lean kind of starts from the top, if you will, and DevOps starts from the bottom, and they've come to meet somewhere.
It's all Lean thinking. Yeah, it's all very Lean. If you look at the larger. So if you take customer development is what they call it, right? So 4 steps epiphany, Lean startup, customer development model, plus Agile software development, plus sort of the DevOps principles for running your IT organization, plus that includes automated infrastructure, plus cloudy stuff. You put it together, that's kind of the full end-to-end picture.
It's cloud gumbo.
Yeah, there's not a name for that yet. It's not a good word for that yet, but that is sort of a one. If you do all those things, you're gonna have one well-oiled, kick-ass. That's when IT becomes a strategic weapon.
Yeah,
that's when you can beat your competition, just because you can out execute them time and time again. And it goes back to the manufacturing. I mean, it's the manufacturing world all over again. People used to laugh at Toyota. You made funny cars, or Dell couldn't make serious computers, and then they took execution as and process as a discipline, and kicked ass doing it.
Yeah. No, and it seems like this unnamed gumbo of stuff. Like there's a lot of attention towards optimizing execution, but there's also, if only empirical, attention towards innovating something. Or innovating maybe is too strong a word, but coming up with something that's useful beyond cheapness. I mean, and that's always a danger of optimizing things.
Yeah.
I think, is that you only focus on cost, and you don't focus on like, well, I've got a $5 thing that isn't useful,
right? But
it's only $5. I mean, like, who really cares?
Right.
So, but there is a nice mixture of actually thinking.
Yeah, and that's where the customer discovery part comes in, or the customer discovery model, because the 4 Steps to Epiphany, great book, because it's about, all this is about enabling innovation, because you can learn, right? You learn faster, so quicker learning. What's learning? You try something, you get fast feedback, and you try it again, you get fast feedback. And all this infrastructure is about enabling that feedback loop, right? And that's something, whether you're a fresh out of the box in an incubator startup, or you're a major global conglomerate, you always need to be able to learn and iterate quicker.
Yeah. No, I mean, unless you have a serious monopoly on your customer base, you need to come up with new stuff.
Yeah, and there's very few companies out there that have that, especially in today's sort of innovative age of innovation.
Absolutely. Well, great. I think I was going to ask you who this applies to, but you answered the question before I asked it, so I think that's a good time to wrap up. So thanks for taking all this time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.